Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Going Nuclear with Osama. I'm joined here with a very special guest. His name is Tom Perrant. He has a background in nuclear engineering, actually a master's in nuclear engineering. He's also working in France for the new nuclear program. He's also had experiences doing his master's as an exchange student at McMaster University in Canada as well, and also working a bit in Germany. Tom, welcome.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today with everyone.
Today, I guess we're going to be talking with Tom all about the French nuclear energy industry. I know the nuclear energy industry is kind of expanding everywhere, but I know
Yeah,
France is definitely one of the top leaders. And I want to deep dive into your experiences and learn about how it was like kind of going to school in France, working in France now as a young professional. What's the new horizons looking like for the country?
yeah. When I was in engineering school, it was a bit tough because like no new nuclear power built. We had 58 nuclear reactor in France at the moment, and they say, okay, it's gonna be the end, like Germany. We're gonna phase out, and slowly we're gonna slow down to like 50% of our electricity. So it was very difficult to go in the nuclear industry at this moment. So I decided anyway because everything was very good, and I say, okay, in the future we need like nuclear power. So after a few years, I started in advance, which is the EPCC for the new build. It stands for engineering, procurement, construction, and commissioning. It's the same in oil and gas, and we build new reactor. And last year, President Macron decided that France is going to do the Renaissance, what we call in France. So basically, they understood that we need nuclear power in France. We don't have anything. So in order to have our own electricity, we need to build new reactor. So they decided to build six new reactors, six EPR2. So that's what we build at the moment in France. I work a bit on the Flamanville project. It's the French EPR, which is currently finishing commissioning. So the big commissioning phase is going to be next year. So a big part of my job is doing commissioning on this part, which is very interesting. And we also prepare the six new reactors. So it's booming in France at the moment. We last year we were 40 where I work, 40 people, and this year it's 1,400 people working on EPR2. So it's booming everywhere, and it's not just like EDF. So EDF built six reactors, and the government asked us to maybe go to 14 new reactors. So it's really big, and we have also startups. So we have a lot of startups booming everywhere. So the government decided with France 2030, so it's what we will do in 10 years, basically. So they decided to put money on EDF to build new reactor. So we have EPR2, which is the new version of EPR, and we have also New Ward, which is an SMR built by EDF and all of the partner. It's not just EDF. We have also Technicatom. We have other people in it. So we have these two reactors for EDF, but we have also very good startup. For example, Genie, they want to decarbonize the production of heat for industry. So it's not just big players right now, it's a lot of people. Last week, Nucleo, which is from Italy, they decided to put 3 billions on the table to find OSMR. So it's very, very big at the moment. So 4 years ago, not a good time to work in the nuclear industry. And right now, you can do what you want. And we know that we need probably 10,000 people each year. So not just engineer, but every people. We need technician. We need people working on INC. We need every people to work with us to be able to do this kind of job.
Yeah, that's exciting. That's exciting to hear about the EPRs, right, being built across
Yeah.
France and all of these startups and how kind of things are being integrated. So, Tom, tell us a little bit about how you got into the nuclear energy industry. Tell us about doing your master's, doing this exchange
Yeah.
program, all these experiences. How did it all start?
So after we have in France class préparatoire, so it's 2 years in mathematics and physics, and after that you go to engineering school. And first year it was very general, and I want to do physics, but I didn't know if it was energy, nuclear, and everything. And we had one course in nuclear engineering and energy in general. And for me, it was the most interesting course in all of the like engineering school because it was at the core of our industry. If you don't have energy, you have nothing. And on this course, you do nuclear engineering and you say, okay, maybe I will do that. So I went to nuclear because basically the physics is very interesting. When you do physics in the nuclear, you do electronics, you do thermohydraulics. It's magnificent. The physics are beautiful. So I decided to do that. Um, After my first year, I went to Germany. I worked on ADS, so it's accelerator driving system reactor. So basically, you put an accelerator driven system and you put it on a core. So the core is subcritical and you can have transmutation in it. So it's very interesting. They work with Japan, so it was an international project. It's Gen 4 reactor, so it was at the forefront of the research. After that, I went to McMaster University, so that's why I know a bit about your system. It was very good. I spent time in the nuclear reactor in McMaster, and it's one of the best things you can do. If you go inside the nuclear reactor in McMaster, you say, okay, I want to do that in my life. I want to go inside reactor. I want to start them up because we had the opportunity in McMaster to start the reactor, and it's something which is not happening a lot. So basically, you are with the guy, and they say, okay, Tom, touch that, and it's gonna start the reactor. And they produce isotope for all of the north of America. So it's to cure people. So it's very important. So they both have research and research facility and producing isotopes. So in McMaster, I say, okay, I will work in probably the nuclear industry. I went back to France and I spent 6 months in EDF direction technique. So basically, it's the technical direction. So it's a lot of engineering things. Um, and I decided after that to go to advance for the new build. What interests me is all of the new build reactors. So I start doing commissioning activities. It's not just specific to nuclear. It's also, thermohydraulics. You have INC, so a lot of things to do.
Tell us a bit about EDF. Like I know maybe some on the call may not, hearing this podcast, may not know about Energy de
Yeah.
France. How is the utility working with kind of other organizations to develop these nuclear new builds?
So basically, EDF for a long time, it was the producer of electricity in France. EDF, it's Électricité de France. So it was from the government, and we had nuclear reactor, we had hydroelectricity, and we produced for the consumer. So we had everything. Everything was in the same group. Right now, it's complicated in France because the European Union want to change that. But actually, in France, EDF is responsible for producing electricity on the nuclear reactor. Advance, the firm where I work, they are the EPCC. So every new build, it's Advance. So for example, we have Flamanville 3 in France, the new EPR. We also work with NNB in UK because UK is building four actually reactors. So they are building HPC and Sizewell, and it's huge project. So for EPR for UK, and Advance is also working for the six EPR2. So basically, Advance is responsible for all of the new build, and we always work with partners. So we have Framatome, which is responsible for the more or less nuclear island. And we have also working with General Electrics, which are responsible for the conventional island. So in Flamanville, for example, the nuclear island, it's Framatome, and the conventional island, it's GE. So we are working together to build it properly.
Okay, interesting. So it's kind of like divide and conquer. Like
Yeah, yeah,
one takes the reactor side, one takes the conventional side. It's pretty cool. So
exactly.
tell me a bit about studying in France, right? So doing your undergrad and then going to masters. How does the system work? So like transitioning into the industry that way.
Yeah, yeah. If you are coming from Canada to France for school, it's going to be difficult at the beginning just because it's not the same. So we don't have the same principle. So in France, for engineering, normally you do 2 years I say normally because like 90% of the people do that. There is always other way, but 90% of the case is class préparatoire. So 2 years of mathematics and physics, or physics, chemistry and everything. So these 2 years, it's in high school. So it's with high school professor, specific to this kind of thing. And after that, you go to engineering. But at the end of these 2 years, you need to have a concours. I don't know in English, but you don't fight with each other, but you have grading for the years, and after that, you say, okay, I will go to this engineering school. So you do this engineering school. Each engineering school is pretty specific. So this, for example, for me, it was nuclear engineering. So you do, after that, you go to EDF, Framatome, or the nuclear industry in general. It's not the only way to work in nuclear industry, of course, because I have a specific master in this type of thing, but we have also people from university, and university is different. So we have on one side engineering school, and on the other side we have university. University is practically the same as in Canada, but we have, for the undergrad, it's 3 years. So I know that yours it's normally four. Um, in France, it's 3 years, and after that, you have your master degree in 2 years. So it's quite different. And when I went to Canada to McMaster University, I didn't understand. Like people were telling, "Okay, are you a master student or do you do undergrad?" And at the end, I was in the middle of the two, so I was like sometimes with undergrad student and sometimes with master student. So I didn't know. Maybe I'm in master, but what should I do? So it's different. But if you want to do something abroad, it's obviously a good choice, I think.
When it comes to masters, if you go into the French nuclear industry, is it kind of the status quo? Is everyone does everyone pretty much have a master's degree
No,
in the field?
no. Actually, like it's one of the things we try to say. I do a lot of stuff with students, and I always say we don't need we need engineer, but we also need technician, and we need everybody, because sometimes they say, okay, if you want to work in the nuclear industry, you need to have a master in nuclear engineering. But no, actually, 95% of the jobs they are other. You have like, INC, you have everything, but there is just a small amount which are very, very specific to nuclear. For example, neutronics. You have neutronics just in the reactor. So we also need technician. So for example, technician, it's 3 years after high school. And I work a lot with technician actually, because when you do commissioning activities, it's not just engineer. Everybody, I did 1 year in Flamanville, like doing commissioning work on systems. And it's not just engineer. You go inside the reactor and you say, okay, I need to move this type of valve and I need to work. And actually, it's in the middle between technician and engineer. So it was very interesting, of course, but we need everybody, not just engineer. So maybe you can do, for example, we have specific schools. They say, okay, this school has a partnership with EDF, for example. Right now, I'm in Flamanville because I was in Flamanville inside the reactor today. And we have specific school around. They say, okay, we will work with EDF. They have needs, and we can, in 2 years, say, okay, these people will have these specific jobs. And actually, they are trying to do that for the new reactor because we're going to need a lot of people to build them. So it's basically 10,000 people for two reactors. So it's huge. And we are working with all of the, schools and say, okay, people, you should do that because we have needs and we will pay you well to do that.
Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting how the utility is partnering up
Yeah,
with the schools to kind of recruit students earlier.
yeah,
That's really interesting. And tell me about where are all the jobs, right? Like, when you look at France from Canada,
yeah,
everyone loves Paris, right? The
yeah,
Eiffel Tower, right? So let's use that maybe as a reference.
yeah.
Where are all the jobs? Like, I know there's reactors everywhere across France, but
We have reactor practically everywhere. So I said 56 reactor at the moment, plus one, which is Flamanville, which is at the very northwest of France. So we have reactor everywhere. So if you want to work in reactor, you can basically go anywhere in France. The main for engineering, The main part of is Paris, obviously, because in the past it was always Paris for engineering. But right now the EPR center is in Lyon. So we have basically like 1,000 people working in Lyon right now, and it's going to go up. For Neward, which is the SMR, it's also Lyon. So we have actually at the moment two big engineering things. It's in Paris and it's in Lyon. We have also EDF have a lot of people in Marseille. So we have Paris, Lyon, and Marseille, and we have also Tours. We don't have southwest of France, so there is part of France with basically not a lot of engineering job or job in the nuclear industry. But if you don't, yeah, Paris, Lyon, and Marseille, basically for engineering, and after that, everywhere in France. And it's not just EDF, because we always say utilities, we always say, okay, EDF, Framatome, which has the big player, GE, General Electrics. We always say, okay, there is job in this part, but we have also Orano, which is responsible for the production of fuel. We have also La Hague, which is like 20 kilometers for where I am, which reprocess all of the nuclear waste. And if you look at the nuclear industry as a whole, you can practically work anywhere. We have also like, small firm, small thing, maybe 200 people, and they work for the nuclear industry. They are producing valves, which are maybe responsible for the very important phase of the reactor, and maybe like 100 people are working over there. So depends where you want to go, and which this is very good at the moment, because if you want to work in big company like EDF, it's 100,000 people in EDF right now, so more than that actually. So you have big player, but you can also go in startups. We have a lot of startups at the moment, maybe 50 people. So we have work everywhere. For the startup right now, it's more or less in Paris, because if you are in a startup, it's better to be where the money is. So you go to Paris because it's easier to work with people always. But at the end, you can work everywhere. I've met a Brazilian in Poland, and she was from Brazil, and she was working near Metz. It's far east in France, and she was working in a nuclear reactor. So you can basically work everywhere if you are from Canada.
So when it comes to France, the language is very much French, right? So
Yeah,
um, what's that learning curve like? Do you see a lot of international folks working
yeah,
in France? Where are they usually from? Are they usually from
yeah.
areas which speak France? And how is kind of that transition like for people that want to work in France but have a background in nuclear engineering and want to kind of try out that industry?
The first thing is, if you want to learn French, if you are interested by the culture and everything, you can come in France. It's it's possible, and we have a lot of people from everywhere in the world. I have colleagues from Morocco, Italy. We have a lot of Spanish people working in France. We have also people from Brazil, from Argentina. We have people from Canada, from China. Also, we have, yeah, people are moving a lot, and the nuclear world, since it's difficult to find people which are good in the nuclear, if you have a master degree in nuclear, it's very specific. And if you come to France and say, okay, this guy is very interesting. If you are working in a nuclear power plant and you don't speak French, yeah, it's going to be a bit difficult. But if you are willing to learn French, it's perfectly doable. And at the moment in Paris, in Lyon, in the engineering department, we have projects for other country, and all of the project is it's in English. So basically, we have people, they are coming to France. They say, okay, I will work, for example, for the UK project for maybe 3 years, and it's in English, so it's not difficult for you. You can somehow come to EDF working on this project because you speak English, so it's good. And after that, if you want to move in the company, you will need to learn French. But like for people, I learn English, so you can also learn French. So it's perfectly possible. And maybe for specific people, it's more difficult. If you are coming from Japan or China, I have a good friend from Japan. It was really difficult to speak French. It's the same for us. If we move to China, yeah, Chinese, it's a Mandarin. It's a bit big more difficult. But French, it's not that bad. At the beginning, it's gonna be difficult for, of course, but we have people from everywhere. And the other day, I was in a conference on all of the EDF conference, and we had guys from like basically all of the continent. We have like people from Africa, from like everywhere, America in general. We have people from Asia. So at the end, it's very multicultural.
It's great to know that that there are a lot of international people and integrated within EDF. It's important to also know that it is heavily only French, right? That
Yeah,
you've got to know the language to survive in the industry there. But when it comes to the European nuclear energy industry, and you're seeing the EPRs being developed across the world, right? Like in the UK and then
yeah.
potentially in Poland and across the world. Tell me a bit about French nationals having the opportunities to go out into these
Yeah.
countries, build these reactors.
The main project for a long time for EDF when it was outside France, it was actually in China. Framatome built a lot of reactor in China. So they had a lot of cooperation for this new reactor. So a lot of people from Framatome and also from EDF went to China. They were working either in English or in French, a lot of time in English. So for example, for Taishan, Taishan 1 and Taishan 2, it's two EPR built by EDF and also CGN. So basically, people were going a lot to China to help them build the reactor. And it's funny because at the end, it's working perfectly over there, and they come back to us. So we had people from China coming to Flamanville and say, "Okay, we did that over there; it was better. So maybe we should do that in France." So it was really funny to see people going one side to the other. So a lot of people went to China. We have also like in Finland, so Okilioto, OL3. So we had a lot of French people going over there for the startup. At the moment, it's commission, so one nominal power basically, and it's 30% of the electricity in Finland at the moment, and it's free of CO2. So for Finland, it's very good. So we had a lot of people moving over there for like 4 or 5 years and coming back to France, and it's very good for the people. It's for the company. It's incredible because they gain so much skills. So basically, for the startup, we have a lot of people coming back from Okilioto to Flamanville to help us with the startup of the reactor. The next project for EDF, it's in India, so Jaitapur. I think we're gonna, if we win it, a lot of French people will go over there to help them build it. Because when you sell a reactor to another country, it's not just, you put like 10,000 French people going over there. It's not the case. So basically, you need to have 75% of the reactor built in the country where you want to build it. So, for example, if you want to build reactor in Poland, you need to have 75% of the reactor in Poland. So maybe some French will go over there to help them, but it's about like a learning curve of the industry over there. And at the end, it's not French anymore. It's okay, we sell maybe two reactor, but it's on the country of destination. And for example, for the UK, they want people from the UK to gain experience because, of course, they know that HPC, it's the first one, but they're going to be Sizewell and maybe some after that. So you want really to build a community and to be able to have people. So they encourage us to move around because it's always better if you, for example, go to Canada to learn about the CANDU, because I learned a lot about CANDU reactor when I was over there. You see difference. And when you have this type of difference, when you go back to France, you say, okay, there is difference. We don't do the same thing. Why we do that this way? And it's very interesting for you and also for the company because you always ask yourself, oh, okay, maybe it's different because of that. So yeah, very interesting. And it's possible for us to move to other country. And I think in the future it's gonna be more easier to move to other European country. We have Poland, which they're gonna build, I think, 6 big reactor and maybe some SMR. I'm sure that they're gonna build some SMR. We have Bulgaria and France, Czech Republic. I've seen that the Netherlands, they were thinking about being building new reactors. So it's going to be very good in Europe to move on.
It's phenomenal. It's great that that there's encouragement there, right? That
Yeah.
have the opportunity to go to other countries to expand. So, Tom, tell me a bit about the structure in France, right? In terms of the industry, there's EDF, Energy de France, the government-owned entity, which is the utility, right?
Yeah.
They're operating the nuclear power units, right?
Yeah,
They're operating
exactly.
the units. Tell me about the research facilities, the EPC vendors. Who are the main EPCC vendors? Who are the research institutes? And tell me about even the startups. What startups are
Yeah.
being selected for SMRs and for new builds?
Yeah. So basically, yeah, as you said, EDF it's the utility, so we sell electricity. So we have research in EDF, of course, but one of the forefront of research in France, it's called CEA, it's Commissariat Énergie Atomique. So it's basically a place where they do advanced research. So it's in Cadarache in France. It's very, very, very big. They have multiple reactors, research reactor. They do high irradiation. They do a lot of stuff over there. So this is actually at the forefront of research. And right now, we saw some startups which are going to the private sector. So they say, okay, maybe we should do, a spin-off. So like this type of reactors, they are very interesting. Maybe we can build something with EDF or with other people. So basically, the EPCC right now is advanced, and I think we're gonna help a lot of startup after the first phase. I think Advance has something to play. So the main EPCC is Advance, which is a part of EDF.
One question that I had was advance. How is it
Yeah,
different than Framatome?
very good question. Um, Framatome is responsible for the nuclear island in Flamanville, and it's moving more to know the big component. For example, vapor generator. For example, the vessel. So the vessel is produced by Framatome. So mainly the core component of the reactor, it's Framatome own, and this is for the new reactor because for the past reactor it's a bit different. But for the new reactor, the core of the reactor, the vessel, the pressurizer, the everything will be Framatome on this part, but the rest will be advanced, and the construction will be advanced also.
Hmm.
So they have but which is strange with advanced. We have people from EDF, we have people from Framatome, we have people from advanced. So basically, advanced it's the EPCC, but we have working together. So people from EDF, advanced, and Framatome working together to build the new reactor. So it's a bit strange, but normally it will work. So we hope that it's going to be working. The EDF startup is Neward, but Neward it's not just EDF. So we are working with Naval Group. They are responsible for the submarines, and since they are responsible for the submarines, they have specific way of doing things, modularization and going very fast on what they do. So we are working with them. We are working with a lot of people in the industry to have the SMR working as fast as possible, of course, because as you said, we have a lot of people in the world going with SMR, so we need to be competitive. The director is Renaud Crassou. It's a French guy. He's incredible, so I have a lot of faith in him to build this type of reactor. And for example, we have a newer direction, and they say, okay, to advance, okay, maybe this part, for example, the buildings, it's advanced. So they sell some part of the job to advance to go faster. We have also a startup on more of the. It's at the beginning. For example, we have Jimmy. They want to produce heat for the industry because we know that there is electricity, but a lot of industry need high temperature. We need heat to produce, for example, chemical reaction and everything. So they try to sell very very small reactor to them, and it's actually working pretty well. They had like maybe 25 millions, and I don't know if they will work with EDF at the end. I don't think so, but I hope because it's a very good project. So we will see. So basically, research, it's a bit of EDF, but a lot of CEA, so Commissariat à l'énergie atomique. Framatome is building the vessel. We have also General Electrics, which are responsible for the turbine, for the conventional island. And a lot of things is owned at the end by the government of EDF, because we know that it's so much money, it's so much time. When you build an EPR, it's 60 years. And since you have maybe 15 years to build it and 60 years of operation, at the end, it's like 80 to 100 years of operation. So if you are not the government, it's very difficult for you to say, okay, we will have money back in like 50 years. Nobody wants that on the market. So it's very difficult.
No, it's great. No, great overview of how the industry players are kind of working together and dividing and ruling, right?
Yeah,
So I think that's phenomenal. And then when it comes to, that's only the nuclear new build and operations.
yeah,
Then there's the fuel reprocessing, right?
yeah,
Which
exactly.
I know is huge in France.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So tell me a bit about new technologies. I know here in Canada, there's a lot of interest in molten salt reactors, right? And kind
Yeah,
of the fourth generation, even pebble bed reactor designs. Tell me
yeah.
about the appetite in France for something other than PWRs.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. Jimmy, it's a pebble reactor, so there is a lot of interest for the Gen 4, basically. So we have a lot of interest, but at the same moment, the government it's not putting money on the Gen 4 reactor. So it's a bit difficult. Normally, what we have a specific guy which is called Yves Bréchet. You need to go see him. It's in French, of course, but it's we call Haut Commissaire at the CEA. So he's responsible for the technological choice of France. So he say to the government, you should do that. It's not an obligation, but he say to them, and he say to them that we need to close the cycle, the fuel cycle, because in France we have maybe uranium, but we use tiny parts with PWR. But if you want to close the cycle and use most of the uranium you need to have Gen 4 reactor. And at the moment, on the political point of view, it's quite difficult. I think maybe they don't understand what's happening. And we had, Phoenix and Super Phoenix in France. We had huge molten salt reactor. It was the most powerful molten salt reactor in the world at the moment, like 20 years ago. And it was closed because of political reason. It was not because of technical concern, but it was really political. And for me, it's really complicated. So we have political things with molten salt reactor and Gen 4. What I see is on the political side, it's not happening at the moment, maybe in the future, because 4 years ago, it was not happening for PWR. So it's changed. It's slow, but maybe. But on the startup sector, everything is on Gen 4 because we know that we need to close the cycle. What we do is we say, okay, we're going to do Gen 4 little reactor because obviously it's cheaper and you don't say, okay, I need 10 billions. You say, okay, maybe with 1 billion I can do it. So you need small reactor, and at the moment we all know that ISIMA, it's beautiful, it's small, it's happening. It's a bit of paper reactor, but maybe it's going to be good. So on the private sector, everything go to this type of reactor. And at the CEA, it's been 25 years they are working on this type of reactor. We had a beautiful project. It was called Astrid, and it was my professor in Felma. She was working on this type of project, and at the end, when it was closed down, I was like, she was not happy with it because they say, okay, we're gonna lose so much time compared to the other. And so in France, not that good. You compare to other country, you compare to Russia, they have BA 800, they have molten salt reactor, and they say, okay, we need to close the cycle. You look at China, they say, okay, on one hand, we do PWR, we do it fast, 5 years from first concrete to commissioning, it's huge. But on the other side, they say, okay, we're gonna explore with, like you said, People reactor, we're gonna explore molten salt reactor. We're going to explore everything in Gen 4. And at the end, I know that China will have maybe one good Gen 4 reactor, and they say, okay, this one is working very well. It's going to work, and we're going to build it to close the cycle because they understood that to use most of the nuclear energy, we need this type of reactor.
Yeah, it's no, it's that's really interesting, and I would love to learn more about the Super Phoenix project, uh, and also like what took place, right? Because I know even in Canada and across the world, politics really does influence the energy
Yeah,
policy and if reactors
yeah,
come online or not. But for now, it seems like France is heavily going in the direction the government is supporting the PWRs,
yeah,
and then maybe there's some startups on the side which have Gen 4 technologies that they're introducing. So
exactly.
that's really interesting. So I guess uh, now with this nuclear renaissance, I know France has a rich history of within a couple decades building up this huge fleet of 50 reactors. Right? What are you seeing now, right, in France? Is Framatome ramping up its the vessel production and those major components, and how fast is this new renaissance coming to the new horizons now?
Yeah, you're like perfectly right to talk about Framatome because this type of huge component, it's not happening in like 2 years, 3 years. You cannot change something like that. So at the beginning, it's gonna be, I think, a bit difficult. The government told Framatome they will put, I think, it's 100,000 million on the table. So a huge to change the company, like to have more vessel and everything. So at the moment on this side it's difficult, but Framatome they are very intelligent and they prepare this. So before the French politics say okay we're gonna build reactors, they were already thinking okay maybe we will need to build it. So okay we're gonna say we build it now and it's gonna happen maybe, and if it's not happening, okay it's on our fault, but they took risk, and at the end, I think this risk will be very good. So on the Framatome side, I think it's going to go up very well. But on we need to have a very political. They need to say, okay, it's happening. They need to say to everyone because it's not just Framatome. It's like everyone. You need valves. You need people. You need all of the industry should ramp up to meet the demand. And I think we, for the EDF point of view and advance, it's the same. But we need right now to go to people and old people, maybe like in the 70s, and ask them, how did you do it so fast? Because it was so fast for them. So we need to learn how they did it because we have Flamanville, of course, but since we just have Flamanville and it's not one, we need to build 6 reactors and maybe more of that. And we will have international projects. So we really need to go in the past and say, to look at our history and say, okay, that is very good, that is not good. So find the way of doing it faster. But yeah, I think right now, as I said, 40 people last year where I work and 1,000 at the moment. So the ramp up is huge. We have, of course, problem with people because you need to find people. So that's what I say. If you are from other country and you want to come to work in France, of course you can do it if you have a nuclear background. And if you don't have a nuclear background, there is a lot of job in the industry. So of course.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. That's great. That's great that you're sensing that new energy and that momentum being built. And when it comes to Canada or even the United States, there are a lot of reactor units which were meant to be shut down, which
Yeah.
now the government is realizing that okay,
Yeah.
we need to
Yeah.
invest in these. We need to refurbish these assets because it's going to be expensive to build fresh new ones. So in Canada for now, that's the approach that's being taken. We're taking these reactors that were going to be shut down originally and refurbishing. So whether it be replacing steam generators, whether replacing
Yeah.
pressure tubes, same thing in the United States. We're having reactors that were just about to be shut down and cut up, and they're going to be saving them. The government's investing money. Is the same thing happening in France with the 50 or so reactor units is the
Yeah.
plan to life extend by like 30 or 40 years? What do you think?
Yeah. Normally, at the beginning of the nuclear reactor in France of the PWR, it was 40 years of operation. The main concern is always, as you know, the vessel, because you have irradiation and you cannot change the vessel. Basically, you can change everything else, but the vessel is the main concern. And we shut down two reactors in France about after 40 years. It's Fessenheim. It was a political point of view. It was, I think, stupid. There is no other word because you have very good reactor. It was not on a safety concern because when you ask the ASN, so it's a French regulatory committees, you ask them, there is a problem with this reactor? They say, no, there is no problem. So this reactor was actually very good. It was very good working. So yeah, we closed down two reactors, which is very stupid. But after that, they beginning to understand that it's going to be difficult with the energy crisis we had with COVID and everything. So they decide basically we're going to build reactor, but it's not just that. We also going to extend as much as possible to basically 60 years the reactor. So it's two parts. It's one part, okay, we extend the lifetime, and the other part is we build new reactor. So at the moment, the first one in France, they are at 42 years. So it's happening right now. Every 10 years, you need to go to the regulatory commission and say, okay, we have the same safety as Flamanville. So it's not just a bit of refurbishing, just changing a few pieces. It's also, okay, Flamanville has 4 diesel generator in case of accident. So you will do the same. So it's also going, yeah, the safety, it's a concern. But you can change everything. And at the end, I think we will be able with the regulatory committee to go to 60 years. After that, in France, actually, I don't know because after 60 years, we have problem. We saw that Americans, they go to 80 years, but in France, I'm pretty sure that it's going to be able to, we are going to be able to do it to 60 years. After that, I don't know about the vessel. So I think it will be very difficult. We're going to have extensive research on the property of the vessel after these 60 years. And I hope it's going well, but we will see.
So, most of those reactors that were built in the 1970s, those 50
70s, yes.
reactors.
Yeah.
How many years are left? Kind of at that 60-year mark? Are they at 40 years? Like,
Yeah, we have a lot of at 40 years right now. So like in the next 10 year, most of the reactor, not most of them, but I don't know, it's 12 or maybe 15 reactor at 40 years in the next few years. So basically, it's good that they extend the life because if they didn't do it, we have a problem because every reactor, the curve is going down. Like the nuclear generation is really going down. So in France, they say, okay, we're going to extend the life. And at the same moment, please build new reactor because if it's not happening, we will have a big problem in France. We don't have coal as Germany. We don't have gas. We don't have a lot of renewables. Of course, EDF is like going into the renewables as every other major in the industry. But yeah, it's happening very fast, and that's why the decision to build a new reactor it was very needed at that time because, as you may know, like we are not as good as the Chinese to build reactors, so we need at least 10 good years to build the new one. So right now, the commission for the EPR2, the first one, it's around 33, so 2033. So basically in 10 years. So we need to prepare ourselves for this kind of event.
it's great that there's a realistic push for the
Yeah.
refurbishments, but then also, hey, we got to build these new reactors because France is not, it's not as dependent as other
Yeah.
countries on coal and natural gas. So no, that's phenomenal. I think I've learned a lot from this conversation, from you, Tom. Like learning about the French nuclear industry operations, new projects like Flammaville, and also like the various organizations that have a role to play, right?
Yeah.
Is there any message that you'd like to share with the viewers here before we end it off?
Yeah, Canada, it was amazing. A lot of love for McMaster University. It was a phenomenal semester over there. If any Canadian want to come work in the nuclear sector in Europe, not just France, but also UK, because there is opportunity in the UK, and maybe it's more easier, but in France it's also doable. Please come. Please take few years abroad, and when you go back to Canada, you will go back to Canada because it's beautiful. You will have learned so much on how to build reactor, because in France it's happening at the moment. So if you go back, you will have learned so much. So please come to our country and come to the nuclear industry, because it's a very interesting job.
Yeah, thank you so much for the motivation for everyone here, and I think there's a lot of Canadians that are probably listening to this that are that would like to make a career move to get international experience, but there's always the hesitation. But
Yeah.
I think this podcast is so informative where it helps understand. Hey, here are the different players, and if you want to roll and if you want to check out different career prospects, uh, you can explore those. So I'll definitely include a lot of links in the description below for anyone interested in the companies that were mentioned here. But Tom, again, thank you so much for your time. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Osama, et à la prochaine.
Awesome.